Hey guys, thewalterfootball.com after dark show for February 27, 2025. We covered the draft yesterday with Charlie Campbell being on. So we're going to look at the 2025 fantasy football rankings today. We're going to look at the top 10 of each position. We'll do top 5 for tight ends because yeah, I'm sure our co-hosts will agree. Like, who cares about tight ends? But we'll do all that. We'll have top tens separately, and we'll see what we agree on and what we disagree on. So that'll be interesting. But before we get to all that, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. I'm wearing our co-host's favorite shirt, the money laundering shirt, which is something I love to wear because I get one of two reactions. It's either like I was like, what? Or it's like, oh, I wish I could money launder, and like people have no idea what's going on, and then some, and then some other people are like, oh, that's the best shirt ever, and like they just get it. So, yeah, you can get that as well as the other stuff on the merch store. We have a ton of new merch that just dropped yesterday. We have our Squirrel Lives Matter shirt is back. We have, let's see here, we have Make Football American Again. This is a shout out to all the.
I have not seen that. That's so good.
We have the shout out to all the European games and like the Brazil game that's coming back. We have Dump Roger Goodell, as you can see, instead of it's DEIL. It's funny how his name is spelled that way. So you can get that as well. We have some mugs too. I'll get to I'll show you the two. Hindsight is 50-50, which is the Cam Newton quote. As you can see, someone flipping a coin because you never know. You never know if you're going to have hindsight. So it's sometimes yes, sometimes no. And then this one, you can't change the stripes of a leopard, where you have this guy with a paintbrush trying to change the leopard stripes, and it's not going to go up for him. That's an Emmitt Smith quote. So we have a bunch of stuff here, a couple of new shirts as well too. So you can browse through all that. So you can also go to Amazon, buy my books. The latest one is Jerks of the College Years. I made fun of people I met at Penn State, so you guys might get a kick at it. Also, how the 2020 MVP was stolen, which is an expose about how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers. So if you haven't seen that story or heard about it, you're in for a treat. So you can buy that and help us out. Or super chat, super stickers. That's the best way because we get nothing from YouTube ads. So you guys, your support is really appreciated, and it really keeps us going. Like, I can't say that enough. We got a super chat yesterday from DeGeneron. Before that, we had Slew, John Sanders, the boss. Can't Make an Eagle, Alan Stafford. You guys have been so great with your contributions. So yeah, if you guys want to keep that going, like, we would really appreciate it. Again, can't say that enough. So we're joined by Kenny, the Cap is Fake, who's back from his hiatus, his business trip. Kenny, how's it going?
Oh man, I'm living the dream. I'm excited. I got my official Super Bowl MV or Super Bowl champions T-shirt. By the way, I love the fact that the Eagles won the Super Bowl 59 because it looks like licks. So it's like we are the Super Bowl licks champions. Not sure what that means, but I like it. And life is grand, my friend. Life is grand.
Yeah, well, I'm into it. You know, I'm into it. So that is the best Super Bowl to win, except for maybe Super Bowl 69. There are going to be a lot of jokes made about that. I'm the first, so remember that. So, all right, we'll get into the quarterbacks here. So I don't know. I guess we should have probably planned how we're going to do this. I feel like we alternate, and so I have my number 10 on the screen right here. So I might as well go first, if you don't mind. So my number 10 is Justin Herbert. I feel like he would be higher if the Chargers had any good receivers beyond Ladd McConkey, but they don't. We'll see if they do anything about that. We actually had a question from John Sanders yesterday when we were doing a mock draft. He's like, why aren't you guys mocking a receiver to the Chargers? And it's because it just goes against Jim Harbaugh's philosophy. He's into running the ball, playing great defense, and maybe he goes after a receiver in round 2 or round 3. But given that, like, he wants to run the ball so much, it's hard to rank Herbert above 10. You can talk me into him be like 8, 7, 8, 9 or whatever, but like it's hard to put him in the top 5. So number 10, Justin Herbert. So who do you have at number 10?
My number 10. This is going to be the crazy one. Okay. He's not played anything at all, but I got JJ McCarthy for the Minnesota Vikings. I think Darnold. They're going to move on from Darnold. Now I could be wrong. Obviously, if they don't, that changes things. There are reliable sources in the Vikings organization that say that this guy has been awesome in practice and in the film room. And everyone's in love with his leadership abilities, and felt like if they were not a legitimate playoff team, he would have been a starter late in the year. So I think he's going to be great with a team that's going to be good around them, and I think we'll continue to take steps forward. I really like the coaching staff. Obviously, we like the weapons, some of the weapons he got around him. I think he's we've seen quarterbacks over the last decade play very little year one and then step in year two and have big seasons. And so we've seen several of those guys, and I think he's the kind of guy that has a chance to do it. So McCarthy at 10.
I like it. Everyone would have laughed at Sam Darnold being a 10 at this time last year. So, as long as they have the coaching staff and Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, a really good offensive line, TJ Hawkinson coming back from the 20 ACL, I think I like that call. I think I should have McCarthy higher. I like talking this over with you because I get to kind of figure out do I have someone too low, too high? And I think you make a great point in McCarthy. I think that he could have a really good season. Obviously, there's an unknown factor. He could be a bust, but I think with that coaching staff and supporting system, I think that he's going to do well. Kuiper's Tataroa McMillan to the Chargers 22. I feel like he should go much higher than that. He could be best player available, I suppose, but just doesn't seem like the Chargers want to draft the receiver. The boss says you should stream an underdog draft. We'll be streaming a lot of the DraftKings best ball. Does Underdog already have best ball drafts? Because that's kind of wild. That's so early that they don't. The rookies haven't been drafted yet. So I don't think DraftKings has those yet. I haven't checked. And speaking of JJ, what do you think about JJ MVP at 100-1? You like the Vikings? We can assume he'll be better than Darnold, who was MVP consideration at one point last season. I could see it. You want a mobile quarterback, because they can rush in the touchdowns, so he could get there. I think of all the long shots, he might be one of the best ones. What do you think about McCarthy, 100-1 MVP?
I think there's way worse. There's a lot of other players in that range that have zero chance to win it. Yeah. So do I think he'll actually win it? No, but I don't think it's crazy.
Yeah, just put a little bit on it. I think it could work out. My number 9, Caleb Williams. He was pretty disappointing last season. He did get off to that 4-1 start. But at the same time, he really just, given the receiving core he had, I think a lot more was expected out of him. But now he's going to have Ben Johnson coaching him up. So I think that means that Caleb Williams is going to have a good year. And I suspect that they're going to address their offensive line. It's a good offensive line class in this draft. And the Bears, they have two second-round picks. So even if they don't get a lineman at 10, which, Charlie and I both have them taking a lineman, they could take 2 linemen in the second round. And it makes more sense because they need guards more than tackles at this point. So they take a couple of guards, they can protect Williams, and he could have a big year. So that's my number 9. So who's your 9?
My number 9 is Mr. Drake May from the New England Patriots. I think they're going to take a huge step forward, man. I just watching some of his highlights again over the last couple of days. And he's got incredible athleticism. And I think he could take a huge step forward. Mike Vrabel has proven to be a great coach. This is assuming they draft some players or at least acquire some talent around him. If they go in the next season with exactly what they had in 2024, then this ranking will not look this way when we're drafting in August. But I'm going to just assume they're going to add something to the mix, whether it's a pass catcher or some offensive line upgrades. They have to add some talent on the offensive side of the football and trust Vrabel is going to be great on the defensive side to kind of coach guys up. So I think May is the guy. I have number 9. I like him a lot.
He has a lot of talent. He could make a big leap, and they have the most cap space in the NFL. So we'll see. It's not a great free agency class for receivers. If they don't get Higgins, there's not much available. But maybe they make a trade or something. So I could see Drake May making a big leap. He was a good player to use in DraftKings. He was so cheap. Number 8 is Kyler Murray. He's always a threat to run a lot. He stayed healthy for the first time all year last year. We'll see if that happens again, but he has good weapons. He has Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., got word that Arizona wants to upgrade their offensive line, which I already thought was a strength. So they're going to even bolster it more. I think that bodes well for Murray. I'm not in love with him just because he has that injury history and stuff. But even though he was healthy last year, but if he stays healthy, he can finish around number 8. So
he's not in my top 10 for the same reason. I'm just kind of done with him. Like I'm sort of done with like the Murray hype. Just like just not like every year I'm told this is going to be the year, and I don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Put the gaming controller down and go hit the weights, bro.
Well, apparently he said that he doesn't play video games, which is like the most blatant lie of all time.
He needs some vitamins. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. You said Herbert was your 10. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have Herbert in my top 10 either. No, that's a lie. I'm lying. I do have him in my top 10. Sorry. Okay. He's my number 8. Sorry.
Was that Caleb Williams you're talking about?
I don't have Caleb Williams in my top 10.
There we go.
And there's one other guy that I think, I'm not sure if you have him in your top 10, but I think people might be surprised I have him. Not that I don't have him, but yeah, I got Herbert at number 8. Obviously, we love the weapons. You just talked about Ladd McConkey. Expect him to take a step forward. We love the coaching staff. Can imagine them adding some firepower in the draft. And Herbert, he might be, I don't know if this is true, he might be the most consistently accurate passer in the NFL. He might be better than Burrow in terms of accuracy. Yeah, I think people underrate how incredibly accurate he is, particularly throwing on the run or throwing with anticipation. And I can imagine Harbaugh and the coaching staff will be able to maximize that. So I like Herbert at 8.
Yeah, like I said, you could talk me into him being 8, 9, 10. I think that's his range. If they do get it like a Tedero or McMillan at 22, then I would put him higher, but I'm not sure if they're going to do that. My number 7, Baker Mayfield. I have to say this. I made this ranking before Liam Cohen left, so I might downgrade a little bit, and we'll see what happens with Chris Godwin. Although they did have some of the young receivers step up, so even if Chris Godwin leaves, I suspect Godwin's going to go to Jacksonville to follow Liam Cohen. Still, like Baker Mayfield has a lot of talent around him. Mike Evans is still playing at a high level. Their offensive line is great at 4 positions, so they should be able to keep blocking Mayfield. We'll see what their new offensive coordinator is like. Heading into last year, I was doubtful because I should say I was pessimistic about Mayfield because Dave Canales left. But we saw Liam Cohen become great, like even better than Dave Canales. And we'll see what their new coordinator. Like I said, we don't know how he's going to do, but he does have a good background, and Mayfield has been great. So we'll see. He could take a step back. I'm not like super excited to draft him, but I think he belongs in this range.
Nice.
Who's your number 7?
I like Bo Nix here. I think Bo Nix was really good last year. He finished in standard ESPN scoring leagues. He finished the 7th overall quarterback, which is really remarkable to think when you consider how he started the year. Just looked totally lost, and he had some like really bad moments throughout the course of the year, and he was still able to finish 7th. And so, yeah, I like Sean Payton to take a step forward here. I like Bo Nix to progress. I anticipate they add some weapons here. I know there's been some rumors that Gronk wants to come out of retirement to play for the Broncos. We'll see if that actually happens. But regardless, I trust this team to add just enough for him to take a step forward. He's a great athlete and great arm. And I think as long as he can be coached up to not make the total brutal mistakes, he just makes terrible decisions in moments. But if he can be coached to not do those things, I think he's going to take a step forward. Which he finished 7th, and I have him taking a step forward to be 7th.
I'm not a Bo Nix fan. I've said that a lot. I think the fact that he was an older player coming out, and I thought coming into the NFL he didn't have much upside. I mean, I could be totally wrong about him, but to me, I didn't like him as a prospect. But he did play well last year, albeit against like bad competition. He didn't beat a single good team last year, but. Like you said, Sean Payton could get better he could get better under Sean Payton, and they could draft a tight end who actually can catch the ball or a second receiver. So it does make sense. By the way, McCarthy, number 11, I just looked it up. So he was right on the cusp of the top 10. So I definitely like that call that you made. My number 6, is the Super Bowl runner-up, Patrick Mahomes. So he's had a couple down years in fantasy, and it's like, all right, what happened to this guy? Because he used to be like a fantasy superstar. Like you'd want to play him all the time in DraftKings. Like he was one of the top high-priced quarterbacks, and he's just disappointed. But Tyreek Hill left. The offensive line was pretty bad, especially a tackle last year. I have to think that the Chiefs are going to address that this offseason. Like they're going to get Mahomes good blocking. Rashee Rice come back from injury. They're going to resign. Sounds like they're going to resign Marquise Brown. So they should have a better supporting cast next year. And they're still going to have Andy Reid. And Isaiah Pacheco is going to be healthy. So I feel like this is a good time to buy low on Mahomes. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I actually have him a little higher than that. So okay. I totally agree. I mean, he's my number 5. So I'll just talk about him now since you're talking about him. But
okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm unsure of his character in terms of like his mentality. Does he have the Kobe killer mentality, the Tom Brady just want to sick it to you mentality? Like if he's that kind of guy, then I wonder if losing the Super Bowl, losing the chance to be a 3P and then just getting clobbered in the Super Bowl. Does he go into like total FU mode? Tom Brady after, Deflategate, or Tom Brady after Spygate, or Tom Brady after getting suspended, like we saw that. Like, is Patrick Mahomes that kind of guy? I'm not 100% sure that he is, but I suspect that he might be. And if that's the case, then I think if we get Patrick Mahomes in FU mode next year and they do address the offensive line, I think we could be talking about Mahomes starting to approach what he was earlier in his career in fantasy. I'm not 100% sure if that's only having number 5. You have him at 6, but I could easily see him being 1 or 2, but by the end of 2025.
So I think he does. I mean, you see how he's treated teams that passed on him in the draft. Feels like he always gets up for those games. I remember, I think it was 2020. He had a press conference ahead of the Jets game, and the Jets were one of the worst teams in the NFL. And he was talking about, he's like, man, I really thought the Jets were going to draft me. It seemed like he was actually like hurt by it. And I was like, oh man, he's going to kill them. And he beat them by like 30 or 40 points. He had 5 touchdowns in the first 3 quarters. Like he didn't even play in the 4th quarter. So he's had that killer instinct now. I don't know, maybe it's gone away recently, but I mean, he has won 3 Super Bowls. So I think he'll bounce back. I bet the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl already. I got a profit boosted to 9-1. So I think they're always going to be a good hedge team because there aren't that many great teams in the AFC compared to the NFC. So I think there's a good chance that he does it. So who's your number 6 then? If he's your
number 6 is the greatest quarterback of all time, and that's Mr. Jalen Hurts. I really strong. I think the top 6 guys you could almost argue in any order, almost. But as I look at the guys, obviously I love Hurts. Eagles fan here, love him. He's my hero. I could easily see this team just coming running it back and just saying like, maybe we'll add a couple, passing wrinkles here and there, but really still be run heavy. And the other thing is we've now seen with the Hurts, he's not played a full season ever in his career. He's missed time and had injuries every year. He's been the starter. And so, on a per game basis, he was top 5 last year, fantasy, largely because of rushing touchdowns. But because of the injuries, I think he finished, what did he finish? What was his actual finish last year? I'm trying to look it up. He finished 8th in ESPN standard scoring leagues. And so and he missed a few games. If he had not missed those games, he'd been in the top 2. So I think, I think I expect Hurts to maybe miss a game or 2 here and there, and that would depress his value.
Yeah, and he was also named Philadelphia Citizen of the Year, so that's a good feather in his cap. Will they ban the tush push? Is what Sue's asking. And if they do, then that means fewer touchdowns for Hurts. What do you think?
I don't know that I agree with that. I think they would score just as many touchdowns because it would just do a quarterback sneak. I don't know that the actual pushing from behind actually matters. I don't know that actually makes a difference.
Really?
Like does Devontae Smith, 165 pounds, pushing Jalen Hurts? Like, does that really matter? Like, no, I think what matters is they have a great technician at center. and they have massive guards, and they have a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds. And so I think they'll just run classic quarterback. First, I don't think they're going to ban a tush push. There's a 0% chance it's going to happen. But even if they did, the quarterback sneak, I mean, they'll be fine.
Okay. Well, I agree with you. I mean, Hurts is my number 5, so we crisscrossed 5 and 6 here. I mean, yeah, no issues with Hurts outside of like missing a couple games each year, but I don't think that's a big concern. He hasn't had like a major injury yet, like no like torn ACL or anything. So,
Come on.
Yeah, and you did call him the greatest quarterback of all time, unseating the great Nick Foles.
That's right.
So. All right. So we let's get to my number 4. My number 4 is Joe Burrow. So as long as that defense is going to be terrible, and I have my I have my concern about the ownership spending money adjusting that defense. Now maybe they sign 1 or 2 guys, and maybe it'll be a little bit better than it was last year, but I still think it's going to be pretty bad, like one of the bottom half defenses in the NFL. So. As long as that defense is bad, they're going to have to throw. And Joe Burrow, as long as he has Jamar Chase, he's going to be great. T. Higgins being there would obviously help. But, if Higgins leaves, maybe they draft a receiver early, maybe like Luther Burden, have him going 17 to the Bengals. So, as long as they either keep Higgins or replace him pretty well, then, Burrow is still going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I assume you have him in the top 4 somewhere.
Yeah, he's my number 4.
Okay.
Same. Not a lot of analysis needed. He's awesome. He's amazing. And yeah, there's not much to say. I don't care what the defense could be great and he would still throw touchdowns. Like he's great.
Yeah.
If he had a better team around him, he might be the number 1 quarterback every year. Like remember Peyton Manning for like forever, from basically from like 2000 to like 2014. It seemed like every year Peyton Manning was was like the perennial number 1 quarterback in the league. Like occasionally he'd be challenged a little bit, but anyway, I think Joe Burrow on with a much better team around him would be that. That's what I think of Joe Burrow.
Yeah, if he had, he has Chase, but if he had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, that'd be pretty sick.
And an offensive line and a coaching staff that know what they're talking about. Yeah, and the defense that can give them, short fields occasionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Edgerrin James would be great. I do like Chase Brown, but still,
Chase Brown's pretty good.
Yeah. Still, it's a great sport cast. All right, so my number 3, Jane Daniels, second-year pro here. He ran for a lot of touchdowns, a lot of rushing yardage. He was terrific as a passer, especially on 3rd and 4th downs. I have to believe that they're going to get a good number 2 for him. Like their number 2 was someone different each week. It was like Noah Brown, then it was De'Ami Brown, and then it was Olamide Zaccheaus. And like these guys are not good players. Like the fact that they produced well just has a lot to say about Jane Daniels. Like if they get a good number 2, they have the 3rd most cap space in the NFL. So if they get T. Higgins, like can you imagine the offense of Higgins and McLaurin and Jane Daniels? I mean, it's going to be terrific. So Daniels has all the upside in the world. He could easily be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy next year. I have a 3. I like the Redskins to win the Super Bowl. So what are your thoughts on Daniels? Where do you have him?
I wonder if our last few here are exactly the same, because I have Jane Daniels number 3 as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Everything said, he was awesome. He was awesome. In the last few games of the NFL season and in the playoffs, you could easily argue he was the best quarterback in the NFL for that stretch. I mean, he was absolutely electric. Fully expecting him to take a huge step forward. The Redskins finally have an owner that seemingly is willing to spend money in Josh Harris. The fact that they have cap space again, I believe, is irrelevant, but they have an owner willing to spend money. That does matter. So they could be $60 million over the cap, and it wouldn't matter. They could still sign him because if the owner's willing to shell out money. And I think he's the kind of, he hasn't shown that yet, right? Like, I don't think he has spent any big money yet, but he had, in his previous ventures, he has been proven to be the kind of guy willing to spend money when needed. So being a tragically sad Sixers fan these days, that's not exactly exciting, but he is the owner of the Sixers, and he's the owner of the New Jersey Devils. Is that correct?
And he's Sixers, Devils, and Redskins somehow. Yeah,
it's sort of weird that he's going to own three teams in 3 different cities across the 3 leagues. That's
a little weird. I mean, all in the same area, but you can get around pretty easily.
So he anyway, if they add some guys around, if they were to add any real talent, like they added a T Higgins, I'd be shocked if T Higgins went to Washington. But if he did,
You think? Why? I mean, like I feel like a lot of people want to play with Jane Daniels. Like that's all I've heard is like they want to go to Washington and play with this guy.
Oh, I mean, well, then maybe that's different. I just think Washington's been such a dysfunctional franchise. If you're a good player, why would you want to play with that team? But if that's the feeling, if players around the league feel like, man, I want to play with this guy, well, then that's a game changer.
Yeah.
And if they were to add a T Higgins, man, that would be huge. Absolutely monumental. I'd also wonder, I'm not sure they've got the running back position solved.
Yeah.
But what a difference that could make. So yeah, anyway, all that to say, I think he's awesome. I think he'll take a huge step forward. He could easily be the number one quarterback in fantasy next year.
This is a good draft class for running backs, so they can get a good one in round 2, round 3. But yeah, I mean, look, they have, like I said, the third most cap space in the NFL. That's why I like them a lot to win the Super Bowl. I bet him at 23-1. Well, I bet him at 20-1. Then I bet him again at 23-1. They have so much upside, and we've seen so many second-year quarterbacks win the Super Bowl or at least get to the Super Bowl. And I think he's one of these guys who can take the next step and really get there, kind of like Joe Burrow did in the second year, where he had the lead in the Super Bowl. He just didn't have the offensive line. But the Redskins had the money to get to trade for Myles Garrett, sign T Higgins, sign Ronnie Stanley. Like that is a frightening team if they do all that. All right, so I assume our top 2 guys are Lamar Jackson and Gardner Minshew, right? No.
Yeah.
So, Lamar Jackson is my number 2, and Josh Allen is my number 1.
I have Tanner McKee as my number 2.
Okay, the Irish assassin, of course, you have to have him up there.
No, I've got the same. I got Allen and Lamar 1, 2, just like you.
Yeah, they're very close. Anyone who wants to put Lamar 1 and Allen 2, I don't care. Like, although there are people on Twitter who go a little crazy with that kind of stuff. Like I said that they have a Josh Allen derangement syndrome, which is by the way, one of the new shirts that I made. I have to plug this. Help a friend. The Josh Allen derangement syndrome awareness month. So you can, if you know someone who's been deeply affected by this, you can get this shirt for them. But nice. To me, I think Allen is he's more durable. Jackson has missed time. He missed the end of 2 seasons recently, not the past 2 seasons, but the 2 before that. So that was like kind of the tiebreaker for me here. Like, is there anything else like pushing you toward Allen being number 1?
No, I think Allen's a slightly better player. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I just think he's a slightly better player.
Yeah, I do. And the people,
but you're right. Anyone who wants to argue for Jackson number 1, yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah, crazy people on Twitter are going to come after you saying Allen's slightly better because it was
the top 6 guys, right? For Hurts, Mahomes, Burrow, Daniels, Lamar, Allen. We have Mahomes and Hurts flip flop, but I think you can make a strong case for any of those 6 guys to potentially be the number 1 fantasy quarterback next year.
Yeah, there's a huge drop off after the top 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, they all they could be in any order. Maybe someone comes along and surprises us. Maybe McCarthy has a huge year. But I'd be shocked if barring injury, that those 6 guys aren't at the top, in the top 8 or whatever. But and any of them, like you said, could be the number 1 quarterback. So maybe.
Oh, the guy that I mentioned that I did not have on my list that I think a lot of people will have is Jared Goff, but you don't have him on yours either. So where do you have Goff?
He's 12th on my list. Yeah, I mean the fact that he offers no rushing upside. Every quarterback I have ahead of him, I have projected for multiple rushing touchdowns. I only have him projected for 1 rushing touchdown, and also every quarterback I have ahead of him, I have projected for at least 200 rushing yards. I do not, and Joe Burrow is the 200. Everyone else is 280 or higher. Goff only projected for 40 rushing yards. So it's the lack of rushing upside that doesn't get him in the top 10.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, some of the other guys you mentioned, Drake May, I have 15. I think he should be higher than that. I will move him up if they get some receivers. We'll see what they do. Bo Nix, I have 16, even though I said I don't like him. 16 is fine. And then McCarthy, like I said, 11. So, what do you have? You didn't mention Mayfield. We didn't talk about where you have him.
Yeah, I don't have a top 10 ranking after that, but the four guys that I wrote down that I thought like would be, I'm not sure where I'd rank them, but maybe would be just outside of the top 10. Goff, Baker, Kyler Murray, and Trevor Lawrence would be like, what would be 11 through 14 for me in some order, probably.
Yeah, Lawrence could really move up if they get some good receivers outside of Thomas. And I mentioned, I think Godwin goes there, so that would help a lot. And I do like the Liam Cohen hire. All right, let's get to running backs here. There it is. So we'll begin at 10 again. I went first in running backs. Do you want to go first this time?
I'm going to give you I'm going to give you Mr. Breece Hall, who he finished. What did he finish? 18th in typical ESPN standard scoring leagues. Just a dismal season for the Jets. Everything went wrong. They're going to move on from Rodgers. They're going to overhaul that roster to some extent. And I would imagine they just get back to basics. Like this coaching staffs, like they're not going to be like this try to fancy. They're just going to we're going to get back to the basics, do what we do well. And maybe they just get back to utilizing Hall. And, I was thinking about it today. I was like, when we look at this guy's career, we've only really seen about an 8 or 9 game stretch, in 2023 where he was awesome. And the rest of that, he's been mediocre or struggle or injury riddled or just crap going on around them. So I feel like it's hard to evaluate Hall. But remember this time last year, man, this guy was, being talked about as a potential number 1 guy overall.
Yep.
The talent's there. I think there's some upside with the team. Like you can't get any worse than what the Jets were this past year, right? Like they were just awful. So, I think maybe there's a little bit of improvement there. They don't have to be great for him to be great. They can be mediocre and he can be a top 10 running back.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I don't have him in top 10. I have him 14th, but he could easily be in the top 10. I think a lot of a mistake I feel like evaluators make is that when a team is dysfunctional because of like coaching situations the year before, they assume it's going to be the same thing the year after. And like you just mentioned, like there's going to be a lot more stability there with Aaron Glenn than what they had last year. They had their defensive coordinator like having to do multiple duties. Like it was just a mess. And so, yeah, Breece Hall should bounce back. It seemed like he lost. I think the reason I have him 14th is because like he seemed to lose like some of his burst. I don't know why that would be. Like he's still young and like he did do well coming off the torn ACL last year. So like it's kind of like this was the season I expected from him last year, and last year was the season I expected from him this year. Like it was just strange, but maybe it was the circumstances. And the only problem is that they have a quarterback who isn't very good right now. Like Tyrod Taylor is their starter, which is an issue. We'll see if they trade up for Shedeur Sanders or something, but right now it's that is a big question mark. So they can easily load the box, but in PPR leagues he's going to catch a ton of passes, and so that's going to help. My number 10 is speaking of catching passes, Devon Achane. He did almost all of his damage last year through the air. Like there's so many games where he had like 14 carries for like 20 yards. Like he just couldn't run at all. And that was because Miami's interior blocking was so bad. They just couldn't open up any running lanes. They always got pushed back. This, like I said before, this is a good draft class for offensive linemen. So they could draft 2 linemen early and really improve that area. And if they do, Achane is going to have a much better year as a rusher. And we already know that he can catch passes. So I worry about his durability, but he stayed healthy for most of last year. I think he missed 1 game. So yeah, Achane number 10. So what do you think about
that? He's not in my top 10. I just don't. This is a classic moment. This is kind of speaks to my philosophy in fantasy. When I watch players play, there's a particular style of running back I'm looking for that I know can be great. And if I'm like, if you're not that, then I don't know if you can be great long term. So I don't want to put a lot of stock in you. Mm-hmm. Devon Achane, his style of game and his frame does not shout to me reliable running back all year. And so I'm concerned about either his injury risk, or I'm just concerned about his style of play being able to get fizzled out of the game plan in any given week. So yeah, I'm like, he's an electric player. I'm just not sure that I'd want to be banking on him. if you're ranking him as a top 10 running back, that means you're drafting him in the first 2 rounds of a fantasy draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I would feel comfortable with that.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I guess the style does hurt him, but I just think he's so explosive. Like he can have huge games at any moment, and he's definitely better in best ball and whatnot. Which again, we'll be doing some drafts as soon as they're available. I just checked DraftKings; they do not have best ball drafts yet. I think they're waiting for the draft to be over, which makes sense. Although
it would be pretty early.
Yeah. Although the boss saying you can do best all now a lot easier with wrong ADPs. That is true. The ADPs aren't set. There's not that much of a consensus. So if you can get ahead of it, then you could do really well. I personally, I just want to see where the guys get drafted. As soon as that happens, I'm going to be doing a lot of it. All right. So who's your number 9?
Number 9 is Mr. Bucky Irving. I was all over this guy last year coming into the season. He's great. Really, really, really improved throughout the year. I think this team, I think this team's going to be good again next year. Or not amazing, not elite, not a Super Bowl contender, but I think they're going to be a good overall team. I think their offense should still be productive, even with the loss of Cohen. And so, I like Bucky Irving quite a bit. There's a handful of guys that just missed the cut that I think Bucky Irving, Breece Hall, and like about 6 other guys that are all kind of in one tier for me.
Mm-hmm. I have Bucky Irving number 8, so nice. Slightly ahead of that. I agree with everything you said. Obviously, I mean he was terrific last year. I was not in favor of Tampa's running game last year. I mean Rachaad White, or heading into the year, Rachaad White, just a good receiver out of the backfield, but he just can't find the running lanes. Like he's just not a very good runner. But then Bucky Irving just showed that it wasn't Tampa's offensive line; it was Rachaad White, and he was so much. He's so much worse. He's so much better than Rachaad White. It was night and day. Even Sean Tucker was better than Rachaad White in that one game against New Orleans. Irving looked fantastic, and the fact that he's not going to be a rookie this year just means that he's probably going to get more opportunities. So I like that as well. My number 9, by the way, is Chase Brown. He could be higher, I suppose. There's not a guarantee that like Zach Moss, I don't know if he's going to come back, but like I imagine that Chase Brown will be the primary guy, but like, like at the goal line and stuff like that. Like what if they want to use Zach Moss at the goal line? Like there's no guarantee that like it's going to be 100% Chase Brown, even though he was terrific. Like I think that's a mistake. And I think that I just don't trust Zach Taylor to make the right move. Like we've seen him have a misstep before. Like last year for the first half of the season, he used Zach Moss over Chase Brown, and we were like yelling about it. We're like, why aren't you using Chase Brown more? And it took an injury to Zach Moss for Chase Brown to get to see more touches. If you told me that Chase Brown is going to get like most of the carries like he did in the second half, then he would be higher for me. So do you have Chase? I assume you have Chase Brown in the top 10.
Oh yeah, he's higher for me. He's my number 6.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. I don't know. I think there's a bit of downside, but I mean he's so good. So
I think if T Higgins were to lead, Chase Brown's also he's good in the passing game, and so you just mentioned if he gets the same amount of carries in 2025 as he did in the second half of 2024, then he's gonna but why would they not? Obviously coaches do dumb things. We're just this guy was electric down the stretch. And so, I think if T Higgins were to be gone, I think that means more workload for Chase, not more. I could easily see Brown getting even, cracking top 3, top 4. Mm-hmm. And Joe Burrow, we talked about him, such an amazing quarterback. He just keeps defenses so honest. I think there's a potential for Chase Brown to be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So I mentioned my number 8. I don't know why Bucky Irving doesn't have the picture there, but who's your number 8?
My number 8 is Mr. Joe Mixon. I'd love to see. I'd love to rank him higher because he's just one of my favorite players of all time. I feel like I've owned Joe Mixon just every year he's been in the league. I've had him in multiple leagues. He's perennially underrated, and he was just great this year. I mean, he was great. CJ Stroud wasn't great. The team around him wasn't always great. The coaches weren't always great, but Joe Mixon was always great. He wasn't so great in the playoff game, but he was great down the stretch for them, heavily reliant The talent's still there. I expect Houston to be a decent team. I love Joe Mixon. I feel fine with him. He probably doesn't have the upside as some of the other guys do. There's probably a little bit of a limited upside there, but I think that the floor is pretty high.
Yeah, definitely high. He's not in my top 10. He's number 11, so pretty close. I mean, look, if he's that close, he can easily be in the top 10. Like, I'm not going to argue with anyone putting him in the top 10, in the bottom half of the top 10, I should say. All right, so so I did my number 8. So who's your 7?
My number 7 is Kyren Williams. I was actually really down on Kyren Williams coming into 2024. I just thought he was overrated, and I was way lower on him than most people. And you know what? I watched quite a bit of him in 2025 or 2024, and I realized I was wrong. He's actually a really good running back. He's not like the flashiest guy. He doesn't have the upside, maybe, long term. Obviously, well, I mean, he was the number 1 running back, last year, 2023 in like 12 games, right? Something like that. Mm-hmm. That may not be exactly accurate, but he was great. But I don't know that that's a real sustainable long-term expectation. But he's really good, and regardless of the system, I thought he was more just like a system guy. No, he really is really good. He's got to learn to hold the ball a little better. The fact that he fumbled the ball in the playoff game was amazing. By the way, I just went back and watched the Eagles-Rams game from round 2. The Eagles legitimately came so close to losing that game. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then they won, and then they didn't have a stressful moment after that. Like, that was it. They cruised through the next 2 games. It was amazing. Anyway. But Kyren Williams is great. So what did he have? My number 7.
I mean, you're right. Like that was the closest they came to losing. Now, albeit like Jalen Hurts got injured in that game. So, if he were healthy, he would have done a lot better. Like and also like AJ Brown dropped that pass at the 1-yard line. Like the Eagles did not play their best game in that game. So I have Kyren Williams number 4. So a few spots higher. I have him leading the league with 20 touchdowns in my projected stats. So he's just so good at the goal line. He gets all the touches. And if you look at like the 3 guys I have ahead of him, I'm not going to mention their names yet. Maybe I'll save it, but those 3 guys aren't like the primary goal line backs, as crazy as it seems. Well, one of them is, but he shares touches with another guy. So we'll get to that in a second. I'll get to my my number 7 guy, who's Jonathan Taylor. Now he's it's weird because when Richardson is under center, it's like, okay, I'm worried about Richardson stealing like goal line carries from Taylor. But at the same time, like it feels like with Richardson there, it actually helps Taylor because teams can't be honest against Taylor. Although I think if they get a good passer, then that'll do the same thing, So I like people are speculating that like maybe Matthew Stafford goes to Indianapolis, like because the Colts were talking about getting some competition. Maybe it's going to be Kirk Cousins, who was awful last year, but he was coming off a torn Achilles, and so I think he's going to be better this year. So I feel like they're going to have a better quarterback, with competition with than they had last year with Joe Flacco. So Taylor number 7. I still won't forgive him for dropping that should be touchdown against Denver in the heralded Battle of the Horses that really that ended someone's betting career for at least for a little bit. So no, I think you probably have Taylor in the top 10, right?
I actually don't have him in my top 10.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think he's got him in my I mentioned like my 9 was Bucky Irving, number 10 was Breece Hall. I think between Irving, Breece Hall, and then there's like 7 guys that I have that are so those 9 guys are all like in a tier that you can almost like shake them up and put them in any order you want. And Jonathan Taylor's in that mix. So like he easily could have been my 9 or 10 guy. He could have been in that mix of other guys. But like I just and Jonathan Taylor's a great talent. He's a great player. Not long ago, he was the consensus number 1 pick going into fantasy leagues, fantasy drafts a couple summers ago. I just not sure that I trust that offense, and I surely don't trust the quarterback. Anthony Richardson, you mentioned him vulturing touchdowns. I'm not even worried about that as much as I'm worried about like the offense is just not functional with him in there. Like they're just they're not a functional. They're not a major. They're not a. I was gonna say major league offense. They're not a pro football offense. Like they're. I mean, they're laughable. Anthony Richardson does not belong in the NFL at this stage. He has he's got incredible athleticism. He's got a rocket arm, right? He can throw the ball freaking 800, 80 yards down the field. It feels like. Just he's amazing in those regards. But he just doesn't know how to play football yet, and I don't know that he ever will. And I'm not sure that Shane Steichen and the Colts knew what they were doing this past year. Like I'm not confident. I was super confident in them going into the year. I'm just not sure I'm confident in them coming out, and so it would be hard for me to spend a first or second round fantasy draft pick on Jonathan Taylor with the current state of the Colts.
That's fair. I mean, we'll see what they do with the quarterback competition. If it's Cousins, like I said, as bad as he was last year, I'm pretty confident he's going to be better in his second year coming off the Achilles. But if it's like, I don't even know if it's Flacco again, or if it's like some bum, like if it's like Gardner Minshew, or like if he comes back, it's like, okay, not super high on this. But Taylor is just such a big touchdown machine that I think I'll still have him in my top 10. Where would Quacky have him? Probably at the bottom. It's like with every single Chiefs player, because that's who Quacky hates, Jonathan Taylor and the Chiefs. All right, so who's your number 6?
My number 6, Chase Brown. We mentioned him.
Oh, Chase Brown. Okay, all right. So my number 6, Derrick Henry. There is an age concern here. He's 31. So he was fantastic last year. He had a shot at 2,000 rushing yards. He finished with like 1,800. He's definitely. You could definitely have another great year. He'll have the benefit of Lamar Jackson drawing attention away from him, so he'll have an opportunity. But like I said, age is a worry, and Ronnie Stanley is going to be a free agent. So if he leaves, that's a huge hole at left tackle. So the blocking could be worse. And with the advanced aging, I think that there is definitely a downside here. If he finishes outside of the top 10, wouldn't be surprised. But still, number 6. Do you have him in your top 10?
Yeah, he's my number 5.
Okay. So we're
for all the reasons he was great this year. I thought toward the end of his Tennessee tenure, he felt like he was falling off to me. Mm-hmm. But he was awesome this past year, and I got to give him all the credit in the world for that. Derrick Henry was a long time whipping boy of Kenny Ortiz's early in his career, 2017, 2018. But he's been great, and the only question mark you got to have is the age. Like at some point, this comes to an end. When is it? I don't know. It's hard to know. If I knew for sure he was going to be just as productive as he was this past year, well, then he's in competition for the number 1 spot, right? Mm-hmm. But it's the age that potentially gives you a question mark.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, so he's your number 5. My number 5 is Josh Jacobs. Slow start last year, with the touchdowns. It felt like he's barely scoring touchdowns, and then he finally got there. He had a great first season. That offense is really good, especially when, Christian Watson plays. Now he's going to be out the first half of the season, but Josh Jacobs even said like they need a number 1 receiver. So if they get a number 1 receiver, that's attention taken away from Jacobs. So the offense should be even better. I know you're a big fan of Jacobs.
Huge fan. He's my number 4. So nice. He's my next guy up. I think he's a fantastic talent. I've been a huge fan of his for his entire career. And I could see them just taking a step forward. We didn't talk about Jordan Love, at all in our quarterback rankings, but he's a guy, toward the end of 2023, people were looking at him like he was the next great thing, and had some really good moments in 24. He also had some injuries, but he also just had some moments of regression. If he cleans that up, if Love goes back to 2023 version, I could see that offense just totally taking off, which would mean more touchdowns for Jacobs, which means Jacobs would be, in the running to be a 1 or 2, overall type player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet him. I think it was like an 18-1 to lead the league in rushing last year ahead of the season. Now, obviously, it didn't work out because Saquon went nuts and Henry was second, but Jacobs did have a great year. It felt like they were really saving him for the playoffs because they were giving carries to some of their backups for more than you would think they would, but especially like when they were up, and I guess they didn't need Jacobs in those games, so that was kind of a disappointment. So that's like the one concern I have is like when the Packers are up by like couple touchdowns, like they'll just remove Jacobs, and so you won't get those second half carries. But I mean, he's just awesome. So I have him number 5. You have Jacobs 4. My number 4 is Kyren Williams. So I feel like we're setting up to have a top 3 that's exactly the same, kind of like our quarterback rankings. So yeah, I mean, Kyren Williams, real quick, like he's a touchdown machine. I have him projected, as I said, for 20 touchdowns, and Cooper Kupp's probably going to be gone. So yeah, could have more opportunities to catch passes and get some scores. So yeah, I mean, as long as the Rams keep their offensive line intact, I know that Jonah Jackson might be traded, which would be a downgrade, but still, I think Williams definitely belongs up here. All right, so I assume we have the same top 3, but who's your number 3?
Oh, well, number 3, Kenny Gainwell's my number 3. Is that your number 3 is going to be?
He just missed the cut. He was number 13.
No, it's Bijan Robinson. I got Bijan. My 2 and 3. I mean, really, I can make a case for all 3 of these guys. You can make a case for number 1, but Bijan, he's an incredible talent. Love the player. He showed what he can do. Still don't think they were using him as well as they could have, as much as they could have. But I just wonder, like, as this offense moves on from Kirk Cousins, which I'm assuming they will. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they won't. But I think maybe Bijan continues to take a step forward as being the center point. Of the 3 running backs in the top 3, this is the offense that I project being the worst. So fewer touchdowns. So that's the reason. But of the 3 offenses, of the 3 running backs in the top 3, if the Falcons could be a little bit better, then that would push Bijan up, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, look, Atlanta's offense could be a lot better than many think next year. Like if Michael Penix takes a big leap, like he was already impressive late last season. He was a huge upgrade over Cousins, which low bar, but he was still he took Washington to overtime. The Washington team that went on to go to the NFC Championship. So I think with some experience here, Penix could have a great offense. And yeah, that was still. I still think Atlanta wouldn't have. They'd have the worst offense of all the running backs in the top 3. So I'm pretty confident that we have the same top 3. Robinson's my number 2. It is so close between him and my number 3. My number 3 is Jahmyr Gibbs. It's only because Dave Montgomery's still there. Like Montgomery is the goal line hammer there. And this is what I was talking about. Like the top 3 guys. Like there are guys on each team. Of the players in the top 3 that steal carries at the goal line. For Gibbs, it's Dave Montgomery. For Bijan, you see Algier getting a fair share of carries, and I assume I don't unless you really hate Saquon Barkley for some reason. Like Barkley's number 1. You have Jalen Hurts taking carries at the goal line. So and so I assume that you have Gibbs 2 and Barkley number 1, right?
Well, Kenny Gainwell's hitting free agency. Depending on who signs him, maybe Kenny Gainwell could be obviously it's Gibbs 2, Saquon number 1, and you're right. All those guys have someone in the backfield with them, potentially vulturing. A couple nights ago, I was watching a YouTube video of every touchdown the Eagles scored in 2024, and my wife was sitting on the couch next to me, not paying attention because she doesn't care. She was doing something else, but she looked up and she saw a tush push and she said, my wife, who knows very little about sports, says that, man, Jalen scores a lot of tush push touchdowns. What would happen if Barkley got all those? I was like, well, Barkley would break the fantasy records, every fantasy record ever. That's what would happen.
He'd be like Tomlinson back in the day. He used to get 30 touchdowns every year, and he was the number 1 lock for several seasons.
So yeah, if not for that, Saquon would. I mean, Saquon had scored 20 touchdowns this year, rushing and receiving total, and was tackled at the 1 yard line 9 times.
Crazy.
In 2024. Yeah.
It's insane.
9 times.
Yeah.
So 8 of those, 7 of them ended up being Jalen Hurts touchdowns.
Yeah, 9 times. But speaking of people who don't know about football in our families, my daughter, who's just turned a year and a half. She's starting to say some words, and she likes throwing the ball to me. We had this do I have it on my desk? No, she thinks it's over there. We had this red football that's not it's not regulation size. It's probably 2/3 of the size. So she takes it with both hands. She heaves it toward me, And then when I catch it, I go touchdown. She started saying touchdown, like it's like her first word. That's not mama or dada. So I was pretty proud dad to hear that. So anyway, let's go to receiver. I'll go first this time. So my number 10 is this picture about CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that's quite him, but CeeDee Lamb, number 10. I think a bounce back year for him, and he was like going 1 or 2 among receivers last year, maybe 3. He was definitely in the top 3 last year. So number 10, I feel like is definitely a discount. I just have a concern about Dallas's offense with Dak Prescott coming off a down year, really with the offensive line. We've seen Prescott when conditions are great, he's awesome. When conditions fall apart, bad blocking and whatnot, he doesn't do as well. And that was the case last year, even before he got hurt. So now he's coming off injury too. So, and I also don't like Brian Schottenheimer. I think that was an awful hire. Still, CeeDee Lamb, it's just awful. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb still very talented and still should be in consideration for the top 10. So, do you have him in your top 10?
CeeDee Lamb is in my top 10, yes, because I think he's a great player.
Yeah. Okay. So, who's your number 10?
My number 10 is Nico Collins. Now, if he had stayed healthy and the offense would have remained consistent, or should I say, if CJ Stroud had remained consistent throughout the year, Nico Collins easily could have been the number 1 receiver coming into 2025. Like, he was just on fire. He could run every route. He was open on every play. He was amazing, and he was great in the playoffs. You can only do so much, but the injury and CJ Stroud's inconsistency. We didn't even mention CJ Stroud as well in our quarterback rankings, which is pretty crazy to think. Last year he was, one of the, he was easily top 10, and people were considering him as kind of taking the next big step. But I think Nico Collins, if he stays healthy and CJ Stroud, kind of gets back to form, 10 may end up being way too low for Nico Collins.
Yeah, I mean, he's in my top 10 as well. So I get to him later. My number 9 is AJ Brown. So he has immense upside. He can nuke a slate like on DraftKings. Like you put him in your lineup, he could go off and he could win you your tournament. The only downside with him is that there are so many rushing touchdowns in that offense. It's like he seems to sometimes he just gets lost in the shuffle. Like you'll have a few games in a row where he just doesn't do much and then he frustrates you. So he's pretty like hit or miss, with fantasy. It's like better in like best ball and whatnot or DraftKings because if he doesn't go off, you're not going to win your tournament. But if he does, like I said, you'll have a chance to win a lot of money. So he's a better daily fantasy guy than seasonal.
I've got AJ Brown as my 5th. And I think just on pure talent, I think he could easily be a top 2 receiver. But because of the other weapons on the offense, particularly Saquon Barkley, I think I would imagine AJ Brown, doesn't put up the same numbers that the other guys do. If he were the focal point of the offense. Like we saw in 2022, we saw in 2022 what he was, he was the focal point of the offense. Side note, the Philadelphia Eagles this year in games where both Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown started and finished the game, they were undefeated this year, 15-0.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, their losses, two of them were very similar against Atlanta and against Washington because it involved two of their star players dropping passes. Saquon Barkley dropped the pass against Atlanta. And then Kirk Cousins went down the field. And then against Washington, Devontae Smith dropped the pass. And then Jane Daniels went down the field. They could have easily won those 2 games. The other game they lost was against the Buccaneers when no one played. Everyone was out. So, I mean, this could have been a historic season for the Eagles. If those 2 players caught the ball. And I know every team has that and whatnot, but still, it's early in the year, the Eagles weren't getting any breaks with the injuries and the drop pass. They were 2-2 after heading into their bye, and so you could have had even better odds for them to win the Super Bowl. I believe. I had them at 17-1. I wonder what they were heading into their bye. It had to have been greater than 17-1. Just goes to show that just goes to show if you can properly evaluate like why a team is playing poorly and like think that like okay they can bounce back. You can get great value on these bets.
I bet they were 25-1 or worse.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Cassandra asking, is Diggs sticking around? We don't know. I mean, he's a free agent. He's coming off a torn ACL too, so that's double whammy there. I don't know if he's going to play well. He's an older player coming off a torn ACL. It just doesn't like line up that well for him.
Yeah.
All right, so who's your number 9?
My number 9 is Mr. Malik Neighbors. Now I love the talent. This guy on talent could be a top 2 or 3 receiver in the NFL. Just absolutely amazing. Way better than that bum Marvin Harrison Jr. Anyway, that's a different conversation. And great players find a way, no matter how bad the offense is. I expect this offense will be bad, and that's glorious for me as an Eagles fan. But I love Neighbors as a player. I love watching him play. I love great players being great. Neighbors is great, and I think people won't realize how great he is because he plays on that sorry team. But maybe just in a few years he'll be a free agent. He can come down to Turnpike, come down 95 and do his thing in Philly. Who knows? Follow the Saquon way.
Exactly right. He'll follow the Barkley's lead. I like it. Although the Eagles
he really easily could be higher in the top 10, but I only have him at 9 because I don't trust the offense.
It's fair, definitely fair. We'll see what the Giants do. Charlie Campbell posted an article today saying that the Giants like Cam Ward more than Shedeur Sanders, but they weren't in love with either. So they could be tanking for Arch Manning for 2026. Like if I'm the Giants, that's what I do. And I've had so many Texas fans yell at me. There's no way Arch Manning's coming out. I guarantee that if the Giants had the number 1 pick in 2026, Arch Manning's coming out. Like he could come out. He has the opportunity to choose when he comes out. Like, is he going to risk? Like, what if the Browns had the top pick in 2027? Like, he's going to be kicking himself that he can't go to the team where his uncle played. He can bide his time. Like, if the Browns had the top pick next year, he's probably going to come back. Like, he has his own choice to make. And like, it's not even about the money. It's like he makes money in college now. Like it doesn't matter. So yeah, it's I think if the Giants or Jets had the top pick, I think he's coming out. But anyway, my number 8, I also have Neighbors higher. My number 8 is Ladd McConkey. Again, no picture here. I don't know why these number 8 guys for some reason don't have pictures. The cursed number. Now McConkey was awesome last year. He had 197 yards in that playoff loss. Like, it was insane. You got a bunch of my best balls into the second round. Unfortunately, he didn't play because he lost. But still, he was terrific. He got better as the year progressed. He's like unquestionably the number 1 receiver there. Like, I don't know who else they're going to get. Let's say like sign T. Higgins or something. Like, he's going to be Herbert's top target no matter what. So yeah, he's going to be the top 10. He's better in PPR. If this were PPR, I'd have him higher. But still, I mean, it's a slot receiver, but still, number 8 for McConkey. I think you probably have him in the top 10, right?
He just outside of my top 10. I actually toyed between him and Collins as my 10. But as I think about it, maybe he should have been in there.
Okay. All right. Who's your number 8?
My number 8, CeeDee Lamb. So we talked about him already.
Right.
Same thing. Just he's a great player. He does everything right. Easily one of the best receivers in the NFL. But who knows what's going to happen with his offense. And so, yeah, I feel like if even 8 feels like a little like maybe that's a little high. Like some of the guys have Ladd McConkey on the outside, like even a Jordan Addison. Like, is he worthy of like being ahead of someone like CeeDee Lamb at this point? Anyway, yeah, but I have him number 8.
Yeah, it makes sense. I like it's tough to rank him because that team could be so dysfunctional next year, but he's so talented that you're right. I mean, it's hard to put him outside the top 10. My number 7 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, this is another guy.
Low.
Really, this is another guy who it was much better in PPR. If we're talking PPR, I think he's he's definitely higher than this. I think he's numbers 5. I think if I'm looking at my rankings correctly, he's the reason here is like every player I have ahead of him, I'm scoring more touchdowns except for one. Like there's so many rushing touchdowns on that team. It's kind of like AJ Brown. He kind of gets like sometimes he just doesn't live up to it. Like if you're in a standard league, like he just doesn't get there because he doesn't score the touchdowns. But I mean, I love St. Brown. He's just a phenomenal player. I've always been a big fan of his. And like I said, this is standard scoring, so PPR is going to be higher. So, all right. So who's your number 7?
Just on the PPR, if you look at looking at Fantasy Pros, looking at the kind of the typical scoring finishes, I'm around St. Brown finished number 3 in standard and PPR.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the top 12 receivers in standard and PPR, they're the exact same 12 guys. There's slightly different order, but like it's the same top 3, it's the same bottom 3, but the mid guys in the middle are it's like, I don't know, with all due respect, I just think maybe we overblow the PPR versus standard potentially a little bit.
Yeah, no, maybe. I think you could be right. I'm just going off my projected stats that I have for him.
Okay.
So, also one thing I didn't mention is that Ben Johnson's gone. So you never know how that offense is going to look. Now, I have confidence that St. Brown's going to have a great year. I mean, he's my number 7 receiver, but still, there is some potential for decline. And we saw the Eagles with 2 bad coordinators struggle in 2023. So the Lions with 2 new coordinators, I feel like they could take a step backward. Of all the teams that are lined like 10-1 or higher, the Lions are the one team I have not bet a single dollar on for like any free bets I've gotten via like bonus bets or whatnot or profit boosts. I haven't touched the Lions, and it's because of the 2 new coordinators.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We have number 7. No, where are you at? Is he your 7?
Yeah, he's my 7, so he's your 6. Yeah,
my number 7. Did I give you my number 7?
Oh no, you didn't. Yeah. It was your 7. Yeah.
I'm gonna go Puka Nacua at number 7.
Okay.
I think he finished outside the top 20 this year because of time missed with injury. Man, he's such a good player. And he has become one of my favorite. It's funny that the Rams have 2 players I love watching. One is Kyren Williams, the other is Puka Nacua. Coming into 2024, I was really down on Puka. I was down on both of these guys, those Rams players, because I just wasn't confident that he could really replicate that. I wasn't sure that Cooper Kupp really was done as being the number 1 guy there, but man, was I wrong. Puka Nacua, he runs every route, he catches everything. I mean, he in the snow game against the Eagles in the playoffs, he was phenomenal in that game. And I mean, he almost single-handedly willed, him and Stafford willing that team to make a comeback in the last minute. I mean, it's pretty great player. So, yeah, I love Puka. I'd trust him in any format. He's my 7th receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I feel similar. He's my number 6 guy. He also doesn't have a picture for some reason, but you don't have to worry about Cooper Kupp anymore. Kupp's going to be gone. Maybe they get a new number 2.
Sure.
It seems like they like a lot of their younger guys, like Jordan Whittington. I feel like he could take Kupp's spot in the slot. So, Puka Nacua is going to have a great year next year, provided that he stays healthy. He missed 6 games to injury last year. He missed time as well earlier. So, we'll see if he can stay healthy. I feel like that's like the only question mark here. Well, I guess let's just say another question mark is Stafford's availability. Like, the Rams granted his agent like permission to seek a trade, but I'm like hearing stuff today seems like Stafford's probably going to come back. So kind of like mixed signals, like you don't know. So if this is like Jimmy Garoppolo starting, then obviously you're going to drop Nacua, but as long as it's Stafford, he's safely in the top 10.
Totally agree.
Okay, so you mentioned your 6, right?
I feel like, no, I'm giving you my 6 yet.
Wasn't it AJ Brown or was
AJ Brown's my 5?
Okay, all right. So who's your 6 then?
Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I just absolutely love this player. I think he's great. In the second half of the year, or maybe like the last 6-7 weeks, you could argue he was a top 3 receiver in the league. He was just catching everything, running every route, gets separation. He really became the focal point of the offense, and I expect him to take another big step forward this year. I like the coaching change. I think this will be. I think this could be, a great breakout year for Jackson Smith-Njigba. Number 6.
It's interesting. My first inclination is like, DK Metcalf was injured last year, so he could retake the status of being the top receiver. But I've heard rumors saying that Metcalf might be on the move. So I I mentioned this yesterday. Like I saw something saying like Metcalf to Tampa Bay, which it might be one of those stupid accounts on Twitter that like just engagement farms, and so like, what do you think about this trade, Metcalf for first round pick or something like you see those all the time. I'm just like, I hate those accounts so much. I was like, I don't think I've ever blocked anyone. I've only muted people who've given out spoilers. I might have to mute these accounts. They're just so annoying. Anyway, if Metcalf does leave, then like Smith and Jigba's stock goes like sky high. So you could be ahead of the curve here for sure. My number 5 is Malik Neighbors, someone you mentioned. You definitely make a good case about the offense potentially being defunct, but like, what if they sign Sam Darnold or something? Like, what if they go after Stafford? Like, they could end up with a decent quarterback, like maybe Aaron Rodgers. Although I think Rodgers probably goes somewhere else. I think he goes to Tennessee ultimately, but there is a chance that Neighbors does get paired with a good quarterback, and he's a freak of nature. He's so good. He's so much better than Harrison Jr., as you mentioned, who is not definitely not in my top 10. So I love Neighbors. I just love the talent. I feel like the talent will win over despite like the quarterbacking situation. Like, I mean, he was amazing with Daniel Jones. Like, we don't even think highly of Daniel Jones. So that's my number 5. And you said Brown's your number 5. So we can we can go to 4. My number 4 is Brian Thomas Jr., who was just amazing last year. He was so great down the stretch. We're talking about like downgrading Neighbors for having bad quarterbacks. Mac Jones was Brian Thomas Jr.'s quarterback down the stretch, and yet he was terrific. And now you're gonna have Trevor Lawrence coming back. You have Liam Cohen coaching up Trevor Lawrence, and Liam Cohen even said we're gonna run our offense through Brian Thomas Jr. So that's everything I want to hear. I mean, I want this guy on my fantasy team. Where do you have him? I assume you have him in your top 4. Where do you have him?
He's my number 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. He was phenomenal with a bad situation. If the situation is even a little bit better, like, this is another moment where the Jaguars don't need to be a prolific offense. Trevor Lawrence doesn't need to be a top 5 quarterback for Brian Thomas to produce. They just need to be, functionally mediocre. Just can you actually move the ball to some extent? Can you be a middle of the pack offense in the NFL? If the answer is yes, then Brian Thomas, I think, is easily a top 3 fantasy receiver. If the Jaguars offense is really good, if they're an elite offense, then he's the number 1 receiver in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I think I made these rankings before the Cohen hire. So I would flip flop my number 3 with Thomas right now. So I think I'd have him in the top 3 as well. So who's your number 4?
My number 4 was Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay.
I realized I didn't mention that when we talked about him. Yeah. So I've come around to him. I was really down on him early in his career. He's another one of these players who doesn't fit the normal flavor or style of a receiver. But yeah, he's great. They know how to use him well. I fully expect him to be, easily a top 5 receiver again this year, regardless of the situation. So I have him at number 4.
Okay. My number 3 is someone you mentioned. It is Nico Collins. Right. And I said just now that I would flip flop Thomas and Collins. So I would have Collins at 4, Thomas at 3. I mean, Nico Collins is so talented. He just keeps getting better. I doubted him coming into last year. He definitely proved me wrong. And right now he's the only viable receiver they have on the team. Like I said, Diggs is a free agent, plus coming off the torn ACL. Tank Dell's coming off a devastating knee injury. I don't think he's going to play next year. So Collins is going to be CJ Stroud's lone guy, and I think that Stroud could bounce back next year, coming off the sophomore slump. Assuming they fix their offensive line issues. So I think Collins going to have a huge year. I'm really high on him. So number 4 for me right now, flip flopping Thomas and Collins. So
yes.
And yeah, you said Thomas is your number 3. So we once again have same guys in the top. So
let me guess. It's definitely got to be Johan Dotson.
Todd Pigston. You guess.
Oh, he's retired. He retired. Come on, man.
But you remember that Len Pasquarelli thing with Todd Pigston?
No.
So I forget who the interview is with, but Len. Do you remember Len Pasquarelli? He was he was ESPN writer.
Yeah.
He was being interviewed by someone, and someone mentioned it. So like, oh, the Eagles need an upgrade over Pinkston. He's been pretty poor. And Len Pasquarelli just like lost his mind. He's like, "Are you kidding me? Todd Pinkston's such a very talented receiver." Like he's going insane. And I think that like it's because one of his biggest one of his biggest sources was Pinkston's agent. So like he was like he's hyping him up. And I was like, whatever happened to Len Pasquarelli? I was like, this guy's got to be like dead at this point. Like he's a fat guy. Like he was old. Like back in the early aughts, like when he was writing for ESPN. But no, he's still alive. Like he actually he actually looks the same. So yeah, it's very weird. Anyway, I digress. So it's Jefferson or Chase, obviously. I have Chase 1 and Jefferson 2. And it's because Chase scores more touchdowns than Jefferson. To be fair, you mentioned Barkley getting tackled at the 1. Jefferson has been the wide receiver who's been tackled at the 1 the most over the past couple of years. But still, Chase could be the lone guy there. Like T. Higgins could leave, and that would mean Chase just goes nuclear like every week. And then you have Jefferson who has to like, Jordan Addison's there, and Jordan Addison has proven that he can have some huge games. So like some weeks it's gonna be Addison like getting most of the stuff, or even Hawkinson too. Chase is not going to have that, especially if Higgins leaves. And even if Higgins stays, it's like only Higgins, whereas Jefferson has Hawkinson and Addison taking targets away from him. So, but still, I mean, can't go wrong with either. So, who do you? In what order do you have these guys?
Yeah, I have the same order as you, Chase and Jefferson. They're both great. Jefferson could easily be the number 1 ahead of Chase. Yeah, I think Chase's touchdown upside is just slightly better.
Yeah. I've been projected to have 4 more touchdowns than I've Chase at 17 touchdowns, at Jefferson at 13.
Well, that's more than slight.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess so. It's I've Chase at 17 touchdowns. I don't have anyone more than 14. I have Collins at 14. I had Jefferson at 13, Brian Thomas at 13, Malik Nabers at 13. So that's kind of like why I don't have St. Brown up there, is I feel like he doesn't get as many touchdowns, but still, I mean, he could definitely be in the top 4. All right, we'll touch on tight end because I know that this is a position you despise. So do you want to?
My heart.
Yeah, I will say like real quick, we're gonna do top 5 real quick from my 10 to 6. Jonnu Smith 10, Pat Freiermuth 9, TJ Hawkinson 8. I think should probably be a little higher than that. Travis Kelce 7. We don't know if he's going to retire or not. And then 6, David Njoku. So who is your number 5 tight
end? My number 5 is going to be Mr. Tucker Kraft from the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers offense is going to just take a little bit step forward. I think, one more year with Jacobs in the offense, he'll be a little better. Jordan Love takes a little step forward. Maybe they are able to, their receiver core, which was just, terribly inconsistent throughout the year. Maybe they take a little step forward. Kraft actually proved to be like a pretty good player, not amazing, but I think he has a really high floor. I think he's going to have a significant role in what I think should be a decent offense. So a high floor tight end who I think probably will end up going later than he should. Maybe I'll own a little bit of Kraft next year, but he's my number 5.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere that the Packers said that they underutilized Kraft. I know you always get these talking points in the offseason, like it's BS. I think we did a whole episode about that. Yeah. But it does seem legit to me. Like there are some weeks where it's like, why isn't Kraft doing anything? But he would have like some massive weeks as well. So he could definitely be up here. My number 5 tight end is Mark Andrews. So we'll see what happens to him. I assume he's going to be back, but there is a chance he could leave. And it's kind of like, yeah, he left the 2024 season on a sour note, dropping that 2-point conversion. He also he's dropped another pass earlier in the game. So he just had an awful performance. I think that's going to motivate him. I think he's going to bounce back. And remember, he was coming off an injury heading into the season. Like he had a really tough start. It was Isaiah Likely who went nuts in the first game. Whereas like Andrews looks like he looked like he was running in quicksand to start the year. But I think that, coming off, he's going to be healthier and coming off such a bad game, like probably the worst like game of his career. Like I think he's gonna be motivated to bounce back. So he's my number 5.
Andrew's not my top 5. I thought I think he regressed this year. And and it looks like they're starting, they've got some receivers there that maybe are starting to assert themselves. Isaiah Likely in the mix. They want to have more of a downfield passing game. It wouldn't surprise me if Andrews, I wouldn't say he's not going to get phased out of the offense, but and the tight end position is such a dumpster fire that that like Andrews still might be one of the most reliable of the bunch. I wonder that his upside is significantly capped.
Could be. I do think the regression, like I said, is from the injury. He was better in the second half of the year, but we'll see. We'll see if the motivation kicks in. So who's your number 5?
My number 5 was Kraft.
Oh crap! Sorry, who's your number 4? My bad.
Before Sam Laporta. Love Laporta, great player. They utilize him well. The only thing is, I do think his touchdown ability, his touchdown upside is capped. They've got 2 running backs to score a lot that are going to score a lot of touchdowns. They're going to be the number 1 guys in the red zone between Gibbs and Montgomery. And Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of do cannibalize each other some of the time in the red zone. They run a lot of overlapping routes. And so, with Jameson kind of taking a step forward, he runs a lot of the outside routes. And so in 2023, they'd bump Laporta out wide sometimes and have Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, which is always interesting. But there is a little bit of a touchdown limitation with Laporta. If I thought he had a little bit more opportunity to score touchdowns, I think he would easily be number 2, maybe be number 1.
Yeah, he is. He's my number 4 as well. So move up there. Jameson Williams' emergence really hurt him. So he didn't have as quite a great season as he did as a rookie, and Brent Johnson leaving could hurt him as well. But I mean, who knows? Maybe the new coordinator will emphasize him more. Like actually, there's a chance that there's he actually has a bounce back year. But as you said, the tight end position is the dumpster fire. So I feel like if the position were better, like in a better position, he would probably be like number 7 or 8. But yeah, he is number 4. I wonder if we're gonna have the same top 3. Maybe. So who's your number 3?
My number 3 is McBride.
Mm-hmm.
I just think just on a Trey McBride on a pure talent for tight end. I think he's the second most talented tight end overall. Receiving tight end. Mm-hmm. His ability to he's basically just a big receiver and a bigger, stronger receiver. And so just like I feel like we've been talking him up now 2 seasons in a row. I wonder if 2025 is finally the year where he takes a major step forward. I mean, he was kind of disappointing in 2024, and he still finished as the 3rd best tight end overall scoring. So as far as disappointing, I expected him to take a much bigger step forward. We just saw that offense being inconsistent. So, and then James Conner became kind of the red zone guy. They just seem like in days past, way back when I was a kid, it felt like tight ends were just such like red zone monsters. And that's just the NFL has changed so much where so many tight ends run routes out of the slot, or even they get split wide. They get moved around the field so many tight ends do, that they're not really like the traditional eat up the middle kind of guys in the red zone as they used to be. And so McBride has that old school kind of Antonio Gates kind of box out flavor to him, except I think maybe even better hands. And so at some point, this guy's going to put it together and just have a monster season. And so I'm putting him at number 3, but I think there's always a potential that he just ends up having a monster season and is the number 1 tight end in football.
Well, I have a number 3 as well, so I completely agree with what you said. I have him projected for 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns. That 5 touchdowns would be more than double than what he had last year. So that might seem like it's optimistic, but I feel like he's due for some as people would say positive regression, which doesn't really make sense. But he should be able to score more touchdowns. Like it just felt like he was victimized by a lot of bad luck last year, and I think that he's going to bounce back for sure. Yeah, Slew saying Shirley McBride will be number one if he can find the end zone. Yeah, I mean, look, if he gets 5, like I think you'll take it. Like if you draft him, yeah, but he could certainly have more than that. He could 7 or 8. Like if that offense is definitely lives up to its potential. So all right, I'm thinking our top 2 is also the same as 3 and 4. So who's your number 2?
Greg Calcaterra. No, it's mine's George Kittle.
Yes.
Yeah, Kittle was just awesome this past year. Just overall, he was the best tight end of football last year. Overall, when you considered blocking, receiving, his ability to run multiple routes, inside, outside. They even line up in the Niners. They line players up all over the place. He lined up in the backfield a couple times and kind of as a fullback. Got a few carries. Just he's a do it all kind of guy. He's awesome. I fully expect him to be awesome again in 2025. There's no reason to expect that will slow down. So Kittle number 2.
Yeah, Kittle's my number 2 as well. The only thing you can really ding him on, I think, is his age. He's 32. But on the other side, like you think about the receiving core, Brandon Ayuk is coming off a torn ACL, so I don't think he's going to play early in the season. Deebo Samuel is going to be traded. Sounds like the Niners are shopping him. So it's going to be Juwan Jennings. It's going to be Ricky Pearsall. Not the most experienced receivers that they have. So Brock Purdy could lean on George Kittle even more so than he has in the past. So if you want to argue Kittle number 1, I wouldn't go against that. So our number 1 is Grant Calcaterra, as you said.
That's right.
I assume it's Brock Bowers, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You want to talk about Bowers for a second?
Yeah, he's a specimen. All right, these guys just who was the goofy? It was a goofy baseball manager for the Phillies, coached the Giants after the San Francisco Giants. He would always talk about players presenting themselves so well. Anyway, I can't remember who was that. It was a goofy manager for the Phils for a couple seasons. Yeah, then he played then he managed the Giants after that. But
was it Mattingly?
No,
Mattingly?
I can't. I can't remember the guy. Anyway,
I don't know. Gabe Kapler.
Yeah, Kapler. It's right, Kapler. Oh, what a weirdo. He would talk about players. He was like, their physique, they're such specimens. They present themselves. They present with specimen. I mean, he was such a weirdo. Anyway, there was 3 people in the world that know what I'm talking about right now. So Brock Bowers is that kind of. He just presents as such a specimen. We just talked about George Kittle. Like I talked about him being able to do everything kind of overall great. Brock Bowers is also overall great. He does everything well. He blocks, he runs routes, he can inside, outside, slot, split them out. And I think he's a better receiver than Kittle. I think he's got better hands, maybe a little bit stronger at the catch point. Like this guy's awesome. And I think Bowers could end up being, I think, did he finish as the number 1 tight end last year? He finished number 2. In ESPN typical standard leagues scoring. He was number 2, Kittle was number 1, but I think Bowers could end up being what Travis Kelce had been for the last decade, or what Gronk was for all those years, what Tony Gonzalez and Antonio Gates, all the litany of guys that we went before, those Jimmy Grahams, like that caliber of tight end. I think Bowers is going to be that for the next, at minimum 6 or 7 seasons, maybe a decade or more.
Yeah, I mean, he had one of the best rookie seasons for any position, not just tight end. Like he passed Puka Nacua as the top pass catcher. Puka Nacua is a receiver. So Bowers is just an amazing talent. Like he's going to be at the top here. And just imagine if he gets a good quarterback. Like he was catching passes from Gardner Minshew, and who's the other guy? AOC, Aiden O'Connell. All year last year.
Alexandria Cortez, what?
yeah. She made her way down to Las Vegas.
Listen, as ridiculous as she is, she might have been better than some of the slop they had at quarterback last year.
That's sad but true. But no, it's like he could really get a big boost here if they sign. If they get Stafford in the trade, for example, or if it's Aaron Rodgers, or maybe it'll be Sam Darnold. I don't know how he's going to do without Kevin O'Connell, but still, I do think Bowers could be even better than he was last year now that he has some experience. So yeah, Bowers for sure number one. Funny that we have the same was the same top four, right? We had Bowers, Kittle, McBride, and then Laporta. So same exact top four. So it's funny that like at the top we're at the same at every position. So
yeah.
Right.
Just curious, where do you have Dallas Goedert in your mix?
Goddard is number 16 for me.
Oh, it's pretty low. Wow.
Yeah. Actually, looking at this, like he should be ahead of the number 15 guy.
I mean, let me see what he finished 25 this year, but he also missed.
Yeah.
He missed 5 games.
He always misses games.
Yeah.
That's like that's the one concern I have with him. I'll say this that there are quite a few talented tight ends coming into the draft.
Yeah.
Tyler Warren from Penn State.
Warren's amazing, right?
Yeah, he could be a top 15 pick, like definitely top 20. And then there's
Loveland.
Elijah. Yeah, Colston Loveland. Yeah, he's gonna be there. I think he's the third tight end. Elijah Arroyo. I think it sounds like he's gonna be top 25 pick. Charlie posted an article saying that that teams are considering him in the top 25. I think Charlie has him 20 to Denver, and he has Tyler Warren 18 to Seattle. So yeah, you have those two guys. You have Loveland as well, and then there are a few other guys who can go like second or third round, like Mason Taylor, for example, the LSU tight end. He could definitely. I think I have him in this. I think I'm a third round. There's Jake Velling. And there are a few other guys too, like Harold Fannin. He's more of like an H back, kind of like. It was the Redskins tight end who was Chris Cooley. I feel like he could be like a Chris Cooley type of player. So yeah, like this is a really strong draft class for running backs, tight ends, and offensive linemen and defensive linemen. It's not like people are like saying this is a horrible draft class. It's not that bad. Like it's at the top, it's like not great, but like for those positions, it's pretty excellent. But there are some positions where it's pretty weak too. So. At least we get some good running backs and tight ends. So we could maybe see Tyler Warren. I think he's in my top 10. No, he's number 13. Sorry, it's number 13. So depends where he goes. Like if he goes to a high-powered offense, he could definitely shoot up and be in my top 10.
Well, he shouldn't shoot up. The drugs are bad for you.
Drugs are bad. Okay. Yeah, definitely don't do that. All right, Kenny, let's go kickers. Just kidding. Let's not do that.
Harrison Buckner, number 1. And
Justin Tucker he's going to be Justin Tucker's going to be kicking I'm sure a lot,
Yeah, you'll be kicking for the San Quentin penitentiary team.
Yeah, no off the field issues with him at all. I assume he's going to be at the Browns based on their history.
Listen, I don't want to sound insensitive. I really don't. I just, how does it go this long? Like, how does a guy have that many like go years and years and years? Then all of a sudden there's one accusation, and then all of a sudden, like after that, there's like a bunch of women that come out and they're like, "Oh, but this has been happening for all these years." Like it just was like how do you get away with it that long?
Yeah, I mean, look, it has to be like they didn't want to come forward for whatever reason. Like maybe like if they come forward and they have no evidence of it, it's kind of tough on them. Like they could lose their job and whatnot. But if like one or two come forward, then it's like, oh yeah, and then they suddenly become brave, and they feel like they're not going to have any repercussions if it's proven wrong or something, or like imagine like one or two of them lied about it, then and like the other were truthful, but like if one lied about it and they found out that was false, and like at least like that other person that didn't come forward beforehand wouldn't be in trouble, So I feel like it makes sense. I think that like what if one or two come out, then the floodgates open.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So yeah, well, I will see. I don't. Yeah, I was kidding. Like he's not going to be kicking in the NFL next year. Watson was out for a year, and he's a quarterback. So like Justin Tucker's not even a good kicker anymore. He was pretty bad last year. Like
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what happened. And maybe it was that off the field stuff that got into his head. But
don't draft him in your fantasy league. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't draft kickers in general. But if you're forced into drafting a kicker, which some of my fantasy leagues we are, don't draft Justin Tucker. Just draft some. I used to draft the commissioner of the of our fantasy league, like just as a kicker, just to mess with him. So that used to be my kicker. But anyway, so yeah, all right, guys. Thank you so much for watching and commenting. Really appreciate it. Kenny, great to have you back on after your hiatus. Can't wait to do the show with you next week. But yeah, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. We have one more comment. Mike says, best defensive line draft in years, best running back draft in years, best tight end draft in years. Why does everyone say it's a weak draft? Depends on what you're looking for. I think it's because like the lack of like the top end blue chip talent. Like there's this Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. Some people would have put Ashton Genty there, but still like it's not like an elite player. There's no like Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, those type of guys. Like it's like guys a step below that. But like the depth in this class, especially those positions, is pretty strong. But it's not like a lot of like tier 1 talent, if you know what I mean. So there are a lot of like tier 2, tier 3 good players, but tier 1 just doesn't. It's not here. So like day two could be very strong. So Friday is going to be meaningful, like very much, like I think more meaningful than in most drafts. But Thursday, you're going to see some players go like 25 to 32. You're going to be like, man, I thought I had him in the 3rd round, but like it's going to get weird. It's going to get weird at the end of the 1st round, just because like a lot of teams don't have even 20 first-round prospects. Like they have like I've heard one team even has 13, only 13 first-round prospects this year. Yeah. So yeah.
This one guy I know who works in the NFL just said. Remember, he told me, he's like at the end of the day, if you take the quarterbacks out, not including the quarterbacks, because the quarterbacks they're rated totally differently. Mm-hmm. In any given draft, you only have like at max you have anywhere from like on the low end maybe 10, on the high end like 20, like 10 to 20 legitimate first round quality players.
Yeah.
So it's like. And he seems to think this is on the lower end of that. So not including quarterbacks, you might have 10 to 12 legitimate first round talents and plus the quarterbacks. So that's 14, 15 players.
Yeah, and a lot of players went back to school, with the NIL. So I think next year's class is going to be a lot better. Sue says, who's the greatest Russian composer? Rachmaninoff, who I can pronounce that now, or Tchaikovsky? I have my answer. But I wonder.
Tchaikovsky's the only one I ever heard of, so I gotta go with
it. That's what I said on Saturday when Slew asked me. I pronounced it Rachmaninoff. I said it incorrectly, but I got corrected. It is Rachmaninoff, who I listened to. Slew, by the way, I listened to the 2 and the 3. What is it? The 2 and the 3 told me to listen to. I like Tchaikovsky better. Rachmaninoff was he's good, obviously, like famous composer. But as far as like composers are concerned, I like Tchaikovsky better. I liked Midnight Sonata. It's probably my favorite classical music, which my son used to love listening to when he was a baby. For some reason,
Walt, you're so cultured.
That would that always calmed him down. Like for some reason, like when he was crying, I put on Midnight Sonata, and he would stop crying. So for some reason it helped. But yeah, I'm very cultured. I didn't know who Rachmaninoff was on Saturday, but now I know. So that is our classical. What's your mom say? You know what? Given that like I listened to it, I didn't even ask my mom. I'll have to ask her next time. But I will have that answer for you on Saturday because I'll see her on Friday. So my son hangs out at my parents' house on Friday because he loves to play with his cousins. My sister's daughter is just like his best friend. So yeah, I'll ask her then. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching once again. Kenny, you want to plug your site? You have this Jalen Hurts article, 7 facts to prove that he's elite.
That's right.
Anything else here? 17 facts. Yeah.
That's right. I am working on I've been doing some research projects. So I should have some stuff coming on soon. I've been doing research on for fantasy production and DFS production. Oftentimes we'll look and say, oh, look, this team has been really bad against number 1 receivers, or this team has been really bad against slot receivers. Is that really a good predictor in fantasy? And so I've I've been wanting to be able to answer that question, and so a lot of times my research projects are just like I want to know the answer for me, and so I might as well write an article about it.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I felt like I do that all the time too. Like usually in the betting world, where like I want to see like how do teams do in this certain area, and like I'll do the research and I'll just talk about it on the site. So I definitely get that. So check out thecapsfake.com. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're gonna have the combine tomorrow, the first day of measurements and stuff at the combine and on the field workouts. So gonna talk about that. I don't have a guest lined up, but maybe we'll get someone, but we'll see. Either way, we'll be on tomorrow, and then Saturday. Tom has confirmed that he's gonna be on, and he was really excited about Saturday's episode. So can't wait for that. But yeah, guys, once again, thank you so much. Please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. We'll be back tomorrow. So have a great night, and I'll talk to you then.